Hey, welcome to Move Your Mojo, where we will have casual little chats about mindset, movement, and mojo. I'm Jay, a movement specialist, a maverick mystic, and quite frankly, a mojo magician. We're going to talk about how movement heals, mindset matters, and how both will boost your life force mojo. We'll chew on all sorts of topics from breath work, how to balance your energy, reduce stress, shift perspective, ease back pain, have more orgasms, yeah, I went there, to even the nuts and bolts of navigating the logistics of life with ease and flow. We're going to have grace for where we are, yet gear up 1% each day. Here's to living out loud and loving in full color. Rock on. Now let's move your mojo. Hey folks, it's Jamie here, and I know it's been a hot minute since I've done a podcast, but I've been really feeling the call to focus more of my time and energy here. I like having discussions with folks and getting nerdy, right? So for instance, it's a Saturday morning and I'm sitting here, I was eating my waffle, drinking my coffee, and reading a book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And, there's diagrams and lots of big nerdy science words. And, my partner Troy was like, as I'm starting to chit chat and talk about what I'm reading, he was like, man, you should go break this down for people. Because one thing I rarely miss is meditation. I am a fitness professional, but yet I will sometimes, like most fitness professionals, a lot of fitness professionals, I will often miss my own workouts, more than I should, because I am, servicing clients or answering emails, creating content. And it's really interesting how certain things are really the things that speak to us the most. And for me, that's meditation. That's become a non-negotiable in my life. And I can't say it was easy. So if you're already like tuning out, like she's going to talk about meditation, I can't meditate. Oh my gosh. Maybe not. And actually this particular episode isn't about like how to meditate or all those things. It's about how our thoughts and our feelings affect us to the cellular level. And so maybe that doesn't mean you're going to sit down right away and start meditating like a Buddha, but you're going to maybe become more aware of the thoughts and feelings you're having throughout your day. So let's dive into it a little bit. And I'll try to break this down in a way that isn't too overwhelming, but I think it's really important because our thoughts and our feelings become this loop, right? So our thoughts are kind of the electrical circuit that we put out, if you think about energy. And our feelings are the magnetic circuit that we put out, right? So we all have this aura essentially around us, or this electromagnetic field, whether you believe it or not. But we can measure it with scientific data now and with tools. And that's why sometimes when you say things like, the person rubs me the wrong way, excuse me, it probably really is kind of your electromagnetic frequency and their electromagnetic frequency just aren't jiving. And that happens, right? Nothing's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with you. It's just your, hip hop station and their classical jazz. It's fine. So one of the things I really want to point out right now, that especially as we're embarking on this, new calendar year, and I know lots of people are trying to make new habits and new goals, and you'll, feel like maybe you're stuck or you're trying really hard or you can't seem to make progress. I think a lot of it comes down to this stuff that I've been diving into, for years. And it takes time, right? Because we are talking about rewiring, but it is possible. So let's break this down a little bit. So if you are, essentially thinking a thought on a recurring basis, okay? So let's say, for instance, one of the examples in the book is like, my boss is unfair. And then you start to think about how you're underpaid. And then of course you're probably overworked, and you start to have this like train of thoughts, and the cars of the train start to actually couple together, right? And create this steaming engine through the tracks of your mind. And this essentially creates then feelings associated with those thoughts, right? You probably feel bitter, resentment, anger, frustration, and then those feelings create a chemical reaction in your body that essentially stores themselves in your energy centers. Now, energy centers, some people will know this as, say, chakras. Like the ancients have known this with this innate wisdom for thousands of years. Science has now confirmed that off of your spine, in certain areas, there are clusters of like nerve ganglion that come off of your spine. And they do actually line up with what the ancients have called the chakras. So essentially, each energy center kind of has its own frequency, for lack of better terms. Right now, I'm kind of going to try to keep this not super nerdy and kind of low key for people who haven't dived into reading books on neuropeptides during their Saturday morning breakfast. Okay. So if you have these energy centers, they each kind of have their own frequency. So let's say, like the first energy center down at the sex organs, those are the ones that basically are responsible for, say, your survival needs, right? Like I call it like the caveman chakra. Do I have enough food? Do I have shelter? Am I safe? And then as you go up through the energy centers, they each have their own type of frequency. And this isn't just in like the yoga land. This is also in scientific, measurable land where we can actually measure the frequencies of these nerve ganglion. Okay. So essentially think of it like your body, like a radio station, or actually like Sirius XM, where, the root chakra or the root energy center has, its 80s. And then your sacral chakra or the second energy center is 90s. And then you have your third energy center around your abdomen, the high abdomen, like think the center of the body almost. And that one is, say, yacht rock. And then you've got your heart energy center. Let's say that's jazz. And then you've got your throat chakra, which might just bust its own rhyme to 90s hip hop, and then so on and so on, right? So you have these energy centers, and then you have this energy field around you, right? So think of it maybe like a wireless connection, like, okay, so I have Sirius XM, I've got all these channels in my body, but then you also need a good signal, right? So if you're somewhere where you don't get a good signal, the satellite can't get to you, then you don't have Sirius XM at all. So you have this energy field also around you. So you're kind of like your own satellite of all of these channels. Okay. So when you're thinking certain thoughts on a habitual basis, those thoughts always have an emotion with them. Okay. And then that breaks into a chemical reaction into the body. So you literally, like if you're always thinking, my back hurts, my back's never going to get better. No matter what I do, it's always hurting. My core is so weak. Or, my clients, I don't encourage them to say things like, I have a bad hip, because there's nothing bad in your body in that sense. It's just a body part asking for assistance. It's trying to communicate with you. And so how do you get that energy to move in a different way, right? So instead, I tell my clients to think of things like to that hip or knee or whatever is hurting. Thank you for letting me know. I am listening, and thank you for doing your best, right? So before I go off into that rabbit trail, let's come back here again to those mind-body connection, because this is really important. By the time you're in your mid-30s, if you keep thinking and acting and feeling the same way without changing anything about yourself, then the majority of who you are is becoming this memorized set of automatic thoughts. You have reflexive emotional reactions instead of mindful responses. You have all these unconscious habits and behaviors. You have all these subconscious beliefs and perceptions. And then you have these routine, familiar attitudes. And you're like, this is just me. This is who I am. I'm just this like always in pain person, or I'm, this angry, bitter person, or, I'm just impatient, or I'm, You know what? I really just don't have enough confidence, or all these things that we get ingrained into our brain. And here's the thing. 95% of who we are as adults is so habituated through repetition that the body basically begins to be programmed to the mind. And the mind, not the conscious mind, but the body is running the show. So 5% of your daily life interactions, thoughts, feelings, conversations, relationships, 5% of who you are is conscious. And 95% of who you are is subconscious body-mind programming. This is huge, right? So especially if you're like me, I tend to be what they call type A, right? I like to think about things, to think ahead, plan, organize, be efficient. But if I'm really only in control consciously of 5% of my everyday life, and 95% of me is subconscious, and I'm just going through the motions, if you will, going through the feelings, going through the same old emotions, then that's like me like thinking I'm the pilot of the boat, right? I've got the steering, I've got the wheel in hand, and I am steering the boat of my life. And then I realize that the boat of my life is one of those little metal boats on the little metal carousels at the IGA. What? Like, that's not being in control of my life. I'm not even conscious to be in control of my life, right? So what I really like about like Dr. Dispenza's method is he's constantly, it's one word, change, right? Like thinking about change. When we find ourselves thinking certain thoughts, change, so for me, if I start to think things like, this is so overwhelming, I'm never going to get this done, because I'm rebranding my business and all of that this year. And I've been going at this business for a long time, and, can feel like I'm spinning my wheels, and I can get these recurring thoughts and emotions into my head. So I've personally been reading these books. I've read some of his other books, but I've been reading this one just to continue to do the work to rewire my brain, because I actually am infinite possibility. I actually am, the energy that made the universe, the divine creation of this universe and all of its glory and splendor, all of the same elements that make up all of these wonderful, beautiful things around me also make up all the things within me. So I'm like the universe having a human experience, and we all are. So I'm actually infinite possibility. So why do I want to keep putting all of these like labels and things on me, right? So if we think about these radio stations, if you will, we have our XM stations in our body. They all are basically like little mini brains. So we have the brain, but every energy center, every nerve ganglion, every chakra, whatever you want to call them, have like their own little mini brains, right? So they each have their own way of communicating and creating these loops in the mind and body. And we literally can store this energy, right? So that's how we become programmed, because we all have computers nowadays, right? Everybody in our hand, in front of our face all the time. And if you are typing certain things on the keyboard, you expect certain things to appear. So if you are touching a T, you expect a T. If you are typing out the word you expect THE when you touch it to type out THE. Well, that's how it works in your body. If you're always touching the key, I am overwhelmed, that's what's going to appear on the screen of the front of your brain. It becomes this image literally in your frontal lobe of your brain, right? So the limbic brain becomes what you tell it to be. If you're always touching the key, I am tired, you're going to feel tired. If you're always touching the key, I am unlimited potential, then the body's going to go, all right, well, we get a factory reset on this phone, right? We get a blank slate. So it's really careful. I don't want to say we want to be careful, but we want to be more aware of when we're having these thoughts. And then, are they a thought we need to change? Is this the key that you want to press to type the story of your life, essentially, right? So I can get into all kinds of biochemistry because I love biochemistry. But essentially think about it like this too. If you're starting to, if you have these thoughts and feelings and creating a loop, right? So my boss is unfair, I'm underpaid, I'm overworked, anger, frustration, resentment, all of these things start to create this chemical reaction in your neurotransmitters. Okay, so you're tuning in a certain radio station. You forget that there's these other stations over here, right? And you're like, gosh, I really hate new rap music. AKA my boss is unfair, I'm overpaid, and I'm underpaid and overworked, right? And you're like, this is the only station I can get, right? Like you just keep hearing that same station. It's the only one you can get. Maybe actually a better example is back when, like me in the 80s and 90s, before all these satellite radios were around, you could only get the certain stations that were in your area, right? So you go into a certain region and it was like every radio station is country. You go into another region and every radio station is, grunge rock. You go into another region and every radio station is R&B. Now we've got all the stations all the time. And so that's maybe how we want to think about our mind-body connection, right? We're not limited to regional radio stations anymore. You can think new thoughts. You can create and go to an entirely different channel. Growing up where I grew up, every radio station was practically country music. And there were a few gospel stations, and there was this one radio station you could get in just the right areas that would come from DC, and it was like R&B and hip hop. And then if you got into just the right pockets, there was another radio station that also came from DC, and it was like rock, like a grunge rock or heavier rock, DC 101. But otherwise, you were listening to country music, and a lot of it. Oh, and a pop station. So you were kind of like limited to where you lived and what the masses wanted, right? So think of those thoughts and feelings like that, in a sense, where you are not limited to the regional radio station. And when you allow yourself to keep thinking those same thoughts over and over, you are limiting yourself to a regional radio station. And you can actually completely bust that out and go to a whole new station. You are the DJ of your life. So as long as you keep staying on those same stations, those same thoughts, those same feelings, you're basically telling your body in those energy centers where all those chemical reactions are happening, hey, send me another reason to feel this way that I'm already feeling. Send me another reason to feel angry, right? Like, it's like when you're walking around and you think, gosh, I'd really like to get a Volkswagen Jetta. And all of a sudden you see Volkswagen Jettas everywhere. I'm using that example because that was totally me in 1997. They're everywhere, right? Or what you start to think about, you bring about. You just realize it, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. So you start to kind of like tune in Tokyo on that. You are going to tune in what you're thinking and what you're feeling, because that's the transmission that you're emitting from your own energy centers, therefore your entire energy field. And so electrically and magnetically, that is what returns to you, or that is what you are aware of, or that is what becomes more habitually in your realm. So you become a regional radio station. So as long as you keep reaffirming this identity, you keep pushing the same buttons, you keep tuning in the same stations, then that's essentially how it all translates out into your life, and it becomes your reality. So your personality becomes your perceived reality. Your perceived reality becomes your personality, right? You start having the same thoughts over and over. So let's say, for the instance, in anger, if your body basically starts becoming the mind of anger, because the thoughts you think and the feelings you feel habitually day in and day out lead to anger, then the 5% of your thought that is conscious is maybe aware of the anger, but 95% of your interactions, relationships, communication is subconscious anger. It's ruling you. It's got the ship, actually, by the wheel. So, you want to really think about also the biological effects of this, because let's say the second energy center is the one that is, anger affects it the most, right? So it kind of translates into the station of the second energy system. This translates into biological effects like adrenal fatigue, digestive problems, kidney issues, a weakened immune system, or maybe psychological effects like a short temper, impatience, frustration, intolerance. So you keep producing these same thoughts that keep signaling these same feelings year after year, and you recondition the body to essentially become the mind of anger, because now the body's going to look for that station. It's going to look for ways to keep reaffirming anger. So, the other thing that you can do here is thinking about, say, guilt, right? So guilt or feeling like a victim, right? Life is so hard. I'm a bad parent. I'm doing everything wrong. I shouldn't have been so rude. No one ever wants to be around me, blah, blah, blah. This all can translate in a different way, right? So it can lead to suffering, unhappiness, depression, and so on. And that's where you're storing energy in that center. So it's really important to think about how these things translate, right? And if we want to think, this is all woohoo, Jamie, you're kind of crazy. I mean, yes, probably in some ways I do tend to think, and here's me rewiring my own thought right now, right? Jamie, you're crazy. No, I'm not crazy. I am very passionate about neuropeptides, and I am very curious about how the brain and the body are working together, because I believe the mind is the matter and the matter is the mind, because the mind moves the matter of your body, and the matter of your body can move your mind, right? If you feel stuck, if you think you're stuck, if you feel stuck in your body, and your body reiterates that, I'm stuck, I'm immobile, I'm stiff, I'm in pain, then that creates that loop in the body, in the mind, right? Where you're like, yep, see, I'm stuck. I'm always in pain. This hurts. But if we start to move, say, the body in gentle, creative ways, just to show the mind and the body, hey, actually, this is accessible to me. And as it gets stronger and we start to rewire and we start to get more mobile, little by little, then the mind goes, oh, wait a second. Well, this ankle is moving a little bit better now. Wait a second, this shoulder is moving a little bit better now. And it starts to give us more, right? Because we're tuning into another station, right? Okay, so maybe this station isn't available. I can't say go CrossFit right now, but I can do this workout. And I can do this workout consistently day in and day out, or, on a consistent basis for a set amount of time. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, hey, wait, I can do that, right? I can go do this thing. So that is definitely something that we want to think about. And just to go back to how this isn't all woo-woo, I'll give you some very specific examples. Number one, if I said to you right now, think about a really attractive person, right? And think about that really attractive person maybe making like sultry eyes at you, right? Maybe that really attractive person is taking their shirt off. Maybe that really attractive person is coming really close to you in your space. And maybe that really attractive person is now trying to touch you and running their fingers down along your arm, maybe pulling you close, giving you a kiss. If you notice in this moment, maybe your body is starting to have reactions because you're thinking a thought that's producing a feeling. And so along that train of thought, if I wanted to continue on with that imagery, which I'm not because it's not that kind of podcast, you know full well if you are thinking about a person you're attracted to and allow yourself to feel the feelings associated with that, you're probably going to have a very somatic response. Okay? Your body is going to react. Your body is going to produce chemical reactions, physical reactions to the thought and the feeling. So you see, your body and your mind are doing it all the time. It doesn't just apply for a sexual response. You can create that type of response on any of your stations. Now, another one, right? Because maybe sexuality right now or sensuality is like, you're like, listen, I'm going through menopause and I can't even think those things right now. Okay, fine. Let's move to another station. What if in front of you was a gorgeous dessert of some sort? Maybe if you're not a sweets person, let's go to a steak. But there's something that you really love. Your favorite food is in front of you. And it's perfect. It's gloriously perfect. Right? And you can practically taste it. And now maybe you really want it. And you're going to think, okay, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to XYZ and I'm going to get that big juicy burger or that piece of chocolate cake or that really awesome fresh fruit from this certain market or that crisp, beautiful lettuce from this farm, whatever your jam is. But the body, thinking the thought, started to have a feeling which created a response, a chemical reaction. Maybe you start to salivate. Maybe you start to get hungry. It's why advertisements work so well, right? On the TV, you're watching a game or you're watching a show and all of a sudden you're hungry and you're going for the cabinet because there's a ton of food commercials and they know exactly how this works. And that is how it works. My point is, all of this can be translated into different ways in your body. It's not just, oh, I see this or I'm thinking about this food and now I'm hungry, or I'm thinking about this person and now I'm horny. You are able to have this as well in all of your energy centers. So you can start to tune in Tokyo on all of the centers of your body. So if it's a relational center, right? How you think about yourself, how you think about your career or your passions, how you think about your partner, how you think about your children, how you think about your own parenting, how you think about your neighbors, your country, how you think about politics, how you think about finances, how you think about how well you sleep at night. It's on every level. What you think about, you bring about. And it is the way we were divinely created to be creators within our own little realm of the universe, our own mind and body. We have unlimited potential. So I hope you hear this today and that this all makes sense to you in some way. I really am just kind of shooting off the fly right now, like having breakfast and wait while the iron is hot, go upstairs and plug your microphone in and talk about it. So here it is. Hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions or you want to continue the conversation in some way, please feel free to comment in this podcast. I would love to hear from you. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn as Jamie Haynes. Make sure you spell my name right. JAIMEHAINES. In the world of AI, that should be easy to remember. AI in both names. But I would love to hear from you. I have lots of book recommendations, and I plan on chatting about all of my favorite books on this podcast in the very near future because I want to talk about movement, of course, Move Your Mojo. But for me, Move Your Mojo isn't just about movement, but about also what is. It's about movement. It's about movement of the mind and the body. So I hope you enjoyed this particular rambling of mine, and may it help you find your better frequencies. And when you realize that you're tuned into a channel that you're not really enjoying, that isn't bringing you benefit, that isn't bringing you growth, just remember you can change the channel, tune into a new frequency, and find a whole new reality. All right. Blessings to you all. Have a beautiful, beautiful week.